Oh, goody. Oh, goody. Hey! Hi, everyone. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today I had a little oopsie. I had a little fail, and when dyeing yarn, in that I had a vision in my head of a color I wanted to achieve, and I think I used just way too much dye. So I got something that was still beautiful, just not quite the thing that was in my head. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you could join me. So tonight I want to dye some semi-solid yarns with Jacquard acid dyes to get a little bit of a sense of the depth of shade I can achieve using certain amounts of dye. Now, well, I guess let me back it up a little bit. So the depth of shade is a calculation. So if you were to say that you were going to do a 1% depth of shade, or DOS, that would refer to using 1 gram of dye of whatever the color was per 100 grams of yarn. And if you were dealing with, say, a 1% stock solution, since there you would have 1 gram of dye in 100 milliliters, to get the 1% DOS, you would use 100 milliliters of your 1% stock solution on your yarn. If that is just sort of like a brief, I feel like maybe I should make a video actually talking about the math at some point, but it would maybe make sense for me to like have slides so I could like describe that better versus just verbally talking about numbers. But anyway, if you think about it with all the different colors out there, if you have like a powder blue color, a 1% depth of shade will look vastly different than, say, a 1% DOS of a black, or a color that is more pigmented to begin with. On the same token, some dyes you need to do maybe a 2 to 4% DOS to get the level of saturation that you might see on like the swatch. And that's something that usually is indicated by the company. But the best way to determine the way to get the colors you want is to play around with it. And so that is what I am going to do today. Yes, I should make slides. No, I just started. So none of you have missed anything. We are here at the beginning. So the three, and I guess let me make my head, you guys should see me, not my pot right now. Okay. So the 3 colors that I have right now are Brilliant Yellow, Fire Engine Red, which looks sort of pink on this poster to me. Yeah, I mean, the red, I mean, it's reading very pink on the screen, but it definitely looks like a pinkish red to me. And then I feel like the Sapphire Blue was sold out, so I got the Peacock Blue as my 3rd primary. So I'm just playing with primary colors right now. I have, I think, about 20 Dharma colors right now. And I purchased this poster because Little Bean Loves Yarn did something really cool where for the top of her dye containers, I think she took a poster and like cut part of the color so that way you can see the hue looking down on it in addition to the color name. And so my thought was that I would cut this up at some point, but for now, I think it's a handy reference to show you the colors that I'm talking about and to remind me of the color names. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, you've probably heard me talk about stock solutions. The stock solution mixing video I have on the channel was the first time I made stock solutions with the Jacquard acid dyes. And I learned a few things along the way. One of the things is that I did not get things as soluble as I thought I did. So with some of my dye stocks towards the end, some of the colors were actually a lot more concentrated than they looked. And I think that's because there were some very fine particles that would dissolve when I add them to a vat of boiling water, like we've got up here on the stove, but didn't necessarily seem to be particles floating around. In particular, the violet seemed to get more concentrated the lower I got. So when I mixed these 1% stock solutions today, I weighed out 5 grams of dye, approximately. I think one of them was like 5.3. And then I dissolved it in about 500 milliliters of water to get the 1% stock solution. I did my best to dissolve it, but some of them still had some particles floating around. So I actually filtered the dye through a paper towel, which some of the dye probably stuck to the paper towel on its own right. So ultimately, they're probably a little less than a 1% stock solution, but my hope is that I can get something that's consistent so that way I can eventually do the same colorway with these stocks, like in batches, and get something consistent. And so that at least is my hope. And I will say, at first look, the brilliant yellow did not turn to jelly when I let it cool a bit. I'm talking about you, Sun Yellow from Jacquard, you solidifying soluble nightmare. Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is an old shirt. Yeah, and you can tell I'm down for business today because my hair is up. I'm in got my yarn dyeing pants on. But thank you so much. And yeah, so we're going to, I guess, get started in a moment. And I guess I don't have I do have a pen. I am more prepared than I thought. This is my diary. Ha ha ha. And so, which I mainly use for live streams, so that way I can keep track of my own notes. So it's the 16th. All right, so in my pot, I have 16 cups of water. And that's it right now. That's all that I got. Am I heating the water when I'm dissolving for the stock solution? Yes. When I make this stock solution, I'm using hot water. Today, I was in a bit of a time crunch, so I didn't go for boiling. I heated it up. I was using just fairly hot water, and then making a little bit of a paste to try to, like a slurry to get it wet, and then was trying to dissolve it. But I was in a bit of a hurry, and so I think that, yeah, using boiling water would definitely help. And I think that also just in general, I think that a way that I might end up preferring to do this going forward is weighing out the amount of dye that I want to use for a particular project, and then mixing that directly into a much larger volume of water versus a stock solution. I think that that might be my personal preference for consistency. No worries. I am happy to ask questions. This is why I like doing this live. And then the yarn, we're starting off with just one of my favorites. This is Knit Bare Stroll fingering weight yarn. It is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. The superwash yarn takes up dye beautifully. It's one of my favorites. And yeah, if you'd like to learn more about this yarn, there's an affiliate link in the video description. I am a KnitPicks affiliate, but I buy all of the yarn myself. I guess they sent me one of their subscription boxes for free, but yeah, if I receive something that I didn't pay for, I always try to be clear about that. So yeah, this is the yarn base that we will be dyeing, and as I said, we're going to be doing at least 3 semi-solids. I personally really love dyeing dry yarn. Maybe I'm just a little, I don't know if it's silly, but I really like dyeing bare yarn. Everyone likes dyeing bare yarn. I like dyeing dry yarn. I like the extra variation that gives to the yarn. If you want a less, there's a chance that I'm going to start off with a low enough amount of dye that we could get something that's pretty extreme, that we could get some really pastel patches and some more medium or saturated ones. But I'm going to start at a lower amount of dye, and then I can always add more if I need to, because it's easier to add more dye than it is to back up and add less. And now I'm moving my head around, and I am going to stand up. So a few other things that I'd like to point out. When you're dealing with any type of dye powder, you always want, whoops, sorry guys, I fogged you up. When you're dealing with any type of dye powder, you always want to use personal safety equipment. So I wear a mask and gloves and goggles when I'm dealing with the powders. but in stock solution, I don't. And the other thing is that this is all dedicated dye equipment. None of the items that I'm using today are things that I use for food. So, and looking for my tablespoon. Okay, so we've got 16 cups of water. I'm going to go ahead and only do, let's start with 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. 1-ish. So 16 cups of water is a fair amount of water, especially when I'm only dyeing 100 grams. But I wanted to start with a little more water so that way maybe I can use the same dye bath over and over, but I think that was the main reason. All right, and I'm going to start with yellow. And I want to start with a small amount. I am going to use a 1/4 cup. And I don't know if you guys will be able to see it, but I like these dollar store measuring cups that I have because it makes it very, very clear that the 1/4 cup is 59 milliliters. So this would be the equivalent of adding about 0.6 grams of dye to the pot. So, and to show that I just made these today, I haven't even put any labels on them. Here is my yellow. And people sometimes ask me about the containers that I have. I got these at the Container Store, actually. Oh, okay, it's a little more. That does not look like very much color at all. A little more than a 1/4 cup. But I really want to see how potent this is or is not. Because I have a feeling, just looking at my bottles, that maybe the red and the blue might be a bit more potent than the yellow. But it is a little hard to say because I haven't used these before. And, oh, hi, Keith. Everyone say hi to Keith. He just got home. Thank you, honey. In case you couldn't tell, I'm live right now. Oh, Jessica, thank you so much for the super chat. Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Yes, for the rest of you, if you're curious about what this green box is, it just popped up on the screen. It's a super chat, and I like to call it like a tip jar. There's a little $sign at the bottom of the chat window, and if you appreciate everything that I do and for the teaching and everything, then you can feel free to leave a contribution. But I'll talk about a few other ways that you guys can contribute to ChemKnits as well. Honey, everyone's saying hi to you. Everyone needs a dyeing outfit. Ooh, you could do both. You could dye yarn while I'm over here. Can you share an example of how you write your recipes so that they can be repeated? I will talk about, I'll chat a little bit about that, but first let's pop the yarn in. Wait, do you have a question, honey? Oh, you just, what? Oh, Keith's curious about my setup, because I've got, like, next to the stove, I've got my camera up there. That's the camera, yeah. Oh, I was filming today, so I have the other tripod set up in my kitchen. Hence, I think his confusion. I'm so glad that you guys like my videos. Okay. This does not look like a ton of color to me, but let's add our yarn fast. And it's a superwash yarn. Oh, actually, this is nice. Oh, that's a lot of color. Oh, man. That is a good yellow. Um, okay. Uh, and actually got a pretty good coverage without a ton of agitation. This is a question I get asked a lot because some people might guess it's like, oh, you're stirring it around. Moving your yarn a tiny amount in the pot is not going to cause it to felt. Now, it could. You could have felting issues, but some yarns like Knit Picks Palette, that's a yarn that I find to be a little sticky in that it has a little bit of a halo, and so the fibers might clump together a tiny amount, but it is very, very different. I'm going to reduce the heat. It is very different from, say, like a superwash yarn like Stroll. So there's definitely still some color in the pot. And oh goodness, friends, I'm going to need to up your brightness. But with just a quarter cup of that stock solution, this is a bright canary yellow. Let me see. I can up the... This is the problem of being a one-woman operation. Maybe that's a little better. Trying to, okay, let's see. Yes, it's already really, really clear. It's Big Bird yellow. Oh, cool. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying the videos. Oh no, did the video, okay, you still see the video? Okay, so one person lost the feed, but I would try, I'll say, try refreshing. Okay, here's my face, and I'm going all the way down. So there was a question. Can I share an example of how I write my recipes so that they can be repeated? I've tried on my own, but never seem to get the yarn the same. The big way that I write down my recipes is I film them. A lot of times, if you go into the video description from a lot of my, especially the videos that I've made within the last year, you can see as sort of like an annotated summary where I'll say like, at minute 2, I mixed the dyes, and then I might say how much of the dyes that I mixed in what volume. And so as I'm going through and watching the video, I will like take notes over exactly what I did. And then sometimes when I'm going to do a similar technique again in the future, I'll go back and look at the video, and I can go watch the part where I did it before. Now, this is not something that's practical for everyone. So let me see if I've got a good spot. No, I've got a lot of a lot of notes from the live streams, because sometimes those are ones that it's harder for me to go back and annotate after the fact. But yeah, I don't exactly have a swatch notebook or something where I keep track of the amount of dye and everything for each color. I go back and I look at something and try to do it again. And so, but what I know from this is that for the project that I'm wanting to do, I might want to cut back the yellow even further. So this is something that is helpful. And here I was thinking I was starting with a tiny amount of dye. And I got woo, this is a saturated yellow. So there is that. But okay, so someone else said that they take photos while dyeing. That's another nice way to do it. In theory, if you make a proper stock solution where everything is well mixed and stable, using that and measuring out the amount of that you used over and over should help you get consistent results. However, as I said in my stock solution sort of update video, I did observe some problems in my own stock solutions, in that, especially with the purple, I went and I was trying to create a colorway that I had done before, and the purple came out way darker than it had the first time. And I mean, I was really, really surprised when that happened because I used the same amount and it was a stock solution. And then I realized it was getting more concentrated the closer I got to the bottom. And this was something, the lack of consistency in the stock solutions was one thing that was sort of inhibiting my ability to get a good handle on the colors. And so that's one of the reasons why I decided to come and do this today. So approximately 0.6. And yeah, so I'm going to be using this in like, when I'm wanting to dye yarn in a couple batches, if I want the yellow to be less intense than this, then maybe I would take a 1/4 cup of the dye stock that I've made, mix that with a cup of water, and then take out a 1/4 cup of that at a time or something if I wanted to dilute it that much. So that way I could have consistency across my batches, if that makes sense. But I'm going to go check on this yellow. Oh no, wrong camera. Check on this yellow. Man, this is not a neon color. Ooh, there's definitely like semi-solidness to it. I see a few areas where it's like a bit of a paler yellow. But the reason for moving it a bit within the pot is to keep from getting something that is completely white. But now, here's one of my draining hacks. I pick it up, and I don't want the weight of the yarn to stretch it too much, so I sort of like wrap it around. Oh shoot. I was using this metal pan earlier, but I put, okay, I need to figure out a spot where I'm going to put this. This is when I didn't think things through, because this had some dye on it. My aluminum pan. I like to get these aluminum pans from the dollar store. I find that they are really great. This came as like a 2-pack. I find that they're really great for setting tools on to help keep things clean, and you can add hot things to them. But I'm going to be using a glass Pyrex bowl, and this is one that I got from, oh dear. Okay. This is a bowl that I got from like a secondhand shop. Okay, so that is the yellow. And okay, I should put my gloves back on. Next, I think I'm going to go for the blue. I think that is what I want to do. Now, I did technically go a tad bit above the 1/4 cup with the yellow, but not like a ridiculous amount. So here's the blue, and shaking it, grrr. I see some like, okay, I don't know if you can see, but it's definitely not, oh my gosh, I'm seeing like clumpies that were not there before. So some of this has definitely crashed out. And so this is why when I go and I want to do something in batches, I would likely take from the stock solution, dilute it, and then take from that dilution in case I can't like mix consistently from it. But now you can see some of the particles in there, which are going to irritate me to no end. Bummer. Blue was one I thought like didn't have a ton of trouble mixing. Oh well. I can reset this up with like hot water and stuff, and so the goal, it's still better to go from like measuring out the solution over versus powder when I'm hoping to do this in a few batches. But So to be economical and reuser friendly, I will wash my hands with the gloves on and then dry them. I reuse the same paper towel multiple times too. That way I can take them off and reuse them. I could keep wearing them right now, but I'm not planning on touching the dye. I find that purples and blues tend to resolidify when they get cold. Yes, heating the bottles before use is definitely a way to go back in. I'm sometimes that requires more planning than I have, but that's very helpful. Thank you so much. Use stock solutions to heat them right before use. So I guess I think that that's something that I've seen with the purples and blues that I've used. And I'm going to heat this back up a little bit. My hottest burner is the one, I guess you can't really see my hand, right over here. This one is the, like when I film with the steam pan, I'm always right here because these two burners are the same size. But I guess, I mean, I am looking to absorb all of the dye for just education purposes. So I'm just going to go ahead and go, go, go. One thing about the stroll is that some yarns you really do need to pre-soak so they can absorb color easily. Other yarns, stroll ultimately has a pretty light twist. So it soaks up water pretty quickly. I do see, and I'm still messing with it because this is absorbing quickly. And this one, funny, is way more tonal than the yellow was. The yellow, I think, absorbed slower than this blue. Actually, that's another thing that I should say about acid dyes, is that with food coloring, there's basically 5 molecules that are used in food coloring. So when I'm dyeing yarn with food coloring, I know if the black has red 40, yellow 5 and blue 1, I know a little bit about what it's going to do. When it comes to commercial acid dyes, there's a wider variety of molecules. They don't have necessarily that ingredient on there, so I know exactly what is present. But like there's a hint of blue left, so I'm going to put this back in for a little bit, but that is basically cleared. And to me, this feels faster than what the yellow, oh no! Oh no! It says that I'm still live. Does mine stop? Oh, crud. Keith, do you have internet working? Can you go in and say that I'm still there? My internet just went off. Okay, you guys can see me? Phew. Okay, I'm glad, thank you. I think my internet stopped for a moment. Phew. All right, so I'm not sure where I got cut off, but I was talking about food coloring and how with food coloring, since there's only 5 molecules, I can have a sense of how they absorb and what absorbs faster and what absorbs slower. Whereas with these acid dyes, there's a lot more, there's probably more than 5 color molecules. Some commercial acid dyes will still break because they could be made of a mixture of things, but you could also have dyes that are just one color, and so then they might not break. But, with the same, and especially since I did not pre-soak these yarns, I'm not diluting the acid concentration. So the water volume is, I guess I am diluting it a little bit by adding the dye. Technically, it's slightly less acidic, but not a ton less acidic than the first one. But the blue absorbed the color way, way faster than our bright yellow friend. So, oh, I didn't leave at all? Oh, funny. Um, oh, that's really, really funny. Um, oh, thank you, Conceto Rametta. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you, thank you. Um, I have a lot of fun sharing what I learn. Yeah, when I glanced at the screen, I saw like video unavailable, and I tried to refresh, and like my internet seemed to stop for a moment, so that was scary. But yeah, so I'm learning a lot. But I would say that this this brilliant yellow is very, very brilliant. I'm very curious how the red is going to go with this, but I feel like that this little test is giving me a good, oh, it's so funny that I left on mine, but no one else is when I'm streaming from the computer where I'm watching it. Crap. Okay, the refresh fixed it? Okay, I guess if the video goes back, it says the page isn't working. Keith, am I on right now?
I don't think so.
Crap. Tell everyone that I'm trying.